Rewind. This is Kelly Florence.
And Mark Florence.
And today we're talking about The Game. Now, this movie came out in 1997, and I have never seen it, but you said you used to watch it all the time?
Yeah. Every time I'm on here, it's some movie I watched when I was in 7th or 8th or 9th grade when I was homesick from school. So this is another one like that.
Were you homesick a lot or what?
Yes, apparently I was. I like to stay home from school sick.
Now, it's funny because there's these things that I'm discovering about you through these movies. Like, you always say this phrase, and it's like, I believe so. And it's from this movie.
Yeah, I always say that whenever I have to say something I believe so. I say, I believe so. We thought it was from Dumb and Dumber, but it's actually a guy working at the hotel who says it to Michael Douglas, so we figured out that mystery.
I was really staying up a lot of nights trying to figure that one out. Well, okay, so this movie is 73% on Rotten Tomatoes. Like I said, it came out in 1997. It's directed by David Fincher, who, just a couple years previous to this, directed Seven.
Wow. I thought Seven was a better movie.
Oh, yeah, me too. So we'll get into that. This movie made $109 million at the box office. Now, I have to ask, going into it, I know you watched this movie a lot, but do you love it? Or did you love it? And in this rewatch, do you still love it?
I really like the psychological thriller type movies, and so this one really fits that bill. But I think I remembered liking it more than when I watched it again.
And my thoughts, I haven't seen it, but I'm thinking at the time it was probably super groundbreaking and cool, but I don't know that it holds up.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think there's been a lot more of this style movie or TV show lately that was better. So now that you look back at this one, it's still good, but it's not as groundbreaking. I mean, it was groundbreaking at the time, but not looking back, it's just kind of an average psychological thriller, I'd say.
So this movie starts with these old film reels of him, Michael Douglas, when he's a kid, and his brother and his father, who we assume they're alluding to him committing suicide. Putting that aside for a second, though, did your family have old film reels, or were you old enough that it was like video cameras?
I think I've seen some old film reels of my dad back from the 50s, but my family was more of the big, huge video recorder thing that you like go on your shoulder. So we have a few videos of my family from the early 90s, which we like to watch and reminisce about.
My parents had a whole box of film reels, and they were all like my sister as a baby and Life in Texas, because they lived in Texas then. But there are 0 film reels of me after I was born, and then I grew up in between film and video, so there's 0 video proof of me.
Maybe you were adopted at a later age. That's the only thing I can think of.
Oh, okay, that's a good theory. I have to mention I like Michael Douglas. He is in the Ant-Man movies currently, and I think he's great. And I also love him from this World War II movie called Shining Through. That's one of my favorite movies from my high school years, and I don't know if it's a great movie, but I love him in that.
You know, it came to my head when I saw him playing this, his name is Nicholas Van Orden, and he's a rich businessman in San Francisco, but it came into my head how good of a rich corporate guy Michael Douglas is. His most famous role, Gordon Gekko from the movie Wall Street. So he's got the same kind of look in this movie with the slicked back hair. He's always wearing nice suits and stuff like that.
Yeah, and he claims his shoes cost $1,000 a piece, so $2,000 shoes.
One of his shoes falls off a building or something, and he goes, "There goes $1,000," and the lady's like, "Your shoes cost $1,000?" And he's like, "That one did."
Yeah. So Sean Penn is his brother, and Sean Penn is problematic and always has been. Why does he keep getting so many chances?
Yeah, I don't know. The first thing I noticed is there must be a big age difference there. Or there looks to be a big age difference, because Sean Penn looks significantly younger than Michael Douglas. And I don't know in real life what the age difference is. But at the end of the movie, actually, you find out that Michael Douglas is just turning 48. And I thought he was in his 50s, but anyway.
I feel like Michael Douglas hasn't aged, but he's always looked like 50, you know?
Yeah, when Michael Douglas was 30, he looked like he was 50. Now that he's 80 or whatever, he looks like he's like 54.
Yeah. Oh, so Sean Penn is his brother. He gives him this gift of, like, you know, the game and this immersive experience. I have to ask, what's the best gift you've ever gotten from your brother or sister? We'll open it up to siblings. Do you know?
Gosh, if they listen to this, they're gonna hate me, but I can't think of any.
Oh. Sibling rivalry.
Gosh, I'm sure my brother got me some, like a little box with all these like screws and like pieces of plastic and little pieces of AstroTurf that are from the Metrodome when that was demolished. So that was a pretty good gift. I have that at work at my office.
The way that started, I didn't know if that was going to be a good thing or a bad thing.
Yeah, no, that's pretty cool. And my sister's got me a lot of cool T-shirts and things like that over the years. Like, I can't think of them specifically, but
Well, something else you have in your office, I know your Walter White figure from Breaking Bad is from your sister.
well, there you go. Yeah, I have a Walter White figurine where he's wearing the yellow jumpsuit that he wears later in Breaking Bad when he's cooking meth in Gustavo's secret laboratory.
Would you want to take part in an immersive experience like this? Like, how do you feel about escape rooms or something more extreme, like a haunt or an experience where they can actually touch you and stuff?
Yeah, I really like the concept in this movie, and one of the cooler things I thought was he goes in for this extensive testing. Well, first of all, he's real busy. He's always got these meetings, and he pretty much blocks off a whole. Well, he doesn't know how long it's going to take, but he's kind of intrigued by this game thing that his brother got him. He takes a full day off from everything and get all this psychological testing, all this physical testing, and all this stuff done at this Consumer Recreational Services is the name of the company. They call him CRS. He leaves there, and then he gets a call back that he was denied by the game. So he's pretty upset, actually. So he doesn't really know he's in the game until a few more things happen.
What would you do if you found a life-size clown in your driveway? He brings it in, and that's how they get the camera in his house. But what would you do?
I would most likely just leave. But maybe deep down he knew it was part of the game. I think that's why he brought it inside.
Yeah, I could see that. Now, before we get much deeper into the movie, I need to say there are very few women. There are very few women with speaking roles, and it doesn't pass the Bechdel test. No two women speak to each other. I don't think two women even appear on the screen at the same time. Well, there is one, but one of them only speaks. Okay, so do you want to hear who they are? The maid, the ex-wife, the secretary, the waitress / server, who he ends up hanging out with more, another housekeeper, and then there's a wife who doesn't speak, and then a daughter-in-law. And then the waitress's or the server's roommate. But did you realize how few women there are?
You know, I realized how few women there were, but I also realized how few actual characters are in this movie. It's mainly Michael Douglas, Nicholas, Sean Penn, whose name is Conrad, and then Christine, who's the waitress who spills drinks on him that they kind of have all these adventures together. But there's really only 3 characters in this movie. So yeah, they don't. There's not a lot of different storylines going on.
Something I noticed, there's a lot of, I mean, this is 97, but they're showing VHS tapes and Polaroid pictures. They go past a 1-hour photo place. They're still using landlines. He does have a cell phone, but everything's very like 97.
Yeah, one line I thought was interesting. He took this guy hostage who he recognized from being the doctor at the beginning, and he said, "Where did you go to pick up your paychecks?" Well, today it would just be electronically deposited, so that wouldn't work.
Yeah, true. Like, and also, like, wouldn't they mail it to you? But whatever. The other thing they bring up in this movie that I thought had a Florence family connection, they talk about pranks, and even like the first time Sean Penn comes up to Michael Douglas in the restaurant, he pretends to sneeze and he like sprays him with a spray bottle. And your family is notorious for pranks. Do you want to tell the listeners about some of your family's infamous pranks?
Well, my dad used to like to do this prank around Christmas where my dad had all these candles, like tons, like hundreds of candles. So he'd get them all out around Christmas time. So he'd invite like a family over for dinner, and then he would light like every single candle he had and have like this just a great, well decorated like house with all these candles. And then he would leave a note on the door that said, "We're at the neighbors, come on in." And then we would hide upstairs and listen to them talk about how great the all the candles were. But he had this thing from Germany. It was like a wooden thing with like a fan on the top, and the heat from the flame would like go up, and it would make the thing spin. But somehow that caught on fire. So when the people came in, they're like, "Oh my god, that thing's on fire!"
Oh, pranks on your dad.
Yeah, but yeah, so he did that one a few times.
You know, that reminds me, if anybody has watched New Girl, Winston is a bad pranker because he either goes way too big or way too small. Like an example of a small prank, he's like, "Oh, I sprinkled pencil shavings outside of her car door," like, which is nothing because you wouldn't even notice it. And then also like he, like rented a grizzly bear and put it in someone's car. So, or something extreme. But so, I mean, that sounds like a pretty small prank, but he's done major things too, right?
So my dad is a doctor, and at the local YMCA, they had this pancake breakfast, and he attended the breakfast, or he helped cook pancakes or something, but then he wrote a fake letter that appeared to be from an attorney to the guy who ran the pancake breakfast, and said there was like too much sugar in the syrup or something, and the attorney's client was diabetic, and he was like in a coma or something because there was, and he made it look really official, and I guess, he made no indication that it was a joke, and I guess the guy like freaked out and brought it to like the board, and they were trying to figure out how they were gonna handle it.
See, now that's too extreme. On the other end, I know he had our son, when he was like 7 or something, pretend he had a broken leg, and he had brought crutches with and everything to go visit his sister. And it's like, oh, he broke it, poor Campbell broke his leg, and Campbell had to play along, and then, they revealed it wasn't broken. I mean, just stuff like that. But I know your aunts do pranks, too.
Yeah, they have fake teeth that they like to put in. When they meet new people, they'll all have different fake teeth in, and then, just act like everything's normal, and, to see how the people react.
So, I mean, we could go on forever. There could be an entire podcast just on the Florence family pranks. I think it's pretty fascinating. This movie takes place in San Francisco, and I haven't been, but you were there. Did you feel like it was the San Francisco you remember?
Yeah, I thought this movie did a really good job of like showcasing San Francisco. There's been a lot of classic movies filmed in San Francisco. I can't remember the name, the famous one, like Steve McQueen driving cars up and down the hills, getting air and all that. But yeah, they do a really good job of, showing the hills and, I think they show the Golden Gate Bridge, but they just show lots of different things that are distinctly San Francisco, and, the city almost becomes its own kind of character in the movie.
I just kept thinking, this movie is beyond ridiculous. Like, I mean, this, not the movie, but the setup. And I hadn't seen it, and spoiler alert, but I kept thinking, like, obviously no matter what happens, it is all just part of the game. And I felt like that was really obvious, and it was. Like, that's how it ended. Even when it had, like, the fake twist ending and stuff, it still was part of the game. What do you remember when you watched it the first time? Did it surprise you?
And one of the good things about the movie is that it keeps you on the edge of, is this real? Is this part of the game? They reveal very little about the CRS company, but they make it seem like they're targeting him because he's rich and stealing all his money. So it's everything that happens, because all this weird stuff keeps happening, right in front of the guy, and you're like, is this real? Is this part of the game? Like an example of that is he's at the airport and a pen breaks in his shirt pocket, so there's ink. So he goes into the bathroom to clean it off, and there's this guy in the stall, and he sticks his hand under, and he's like, "Hey, buddy, could you give me some toilet paper? I ran out." And Michael Douglas just kind of looks at him, looks at the hand, and leaves the bathroom. So it's like, was that part of the game or not, or
Is it just showing his character?
Yeah, it showed him kind of like what a real prick he is. That he wouldn't help. He wouldn't spare a square to that guy when he was in need. So that was pretty telling to me.
This reminded me of, there's this show on Netflix, I think it's called Dark Tourist, and it's sort of like going to tour dark things or do dark things that aren't necessarily, touristy or typically touristy. And one of the things I saw, an episode I watched, you pay to like reenact a border crossing, and you're like thrown around and you're yelled at, and they like shoot fake bullets over your head and stuff. And that, felt very similar to this, but you know what you're getting into with that. And this, he didn't know what he was getting into.
Yeah, he didn't sign up for this. His brother, I think his brother just felt he was just a complete a-hole, and he was just, leading this lonely life on his own, where he would just go to his huge mansion and hang out by himself and watch financial news every night, and the only person he really talked to was his maid, and he just kind of got into this funk of this bad routine, and I think his brother was just trying to get him out of that. I think that's one of the points in the movie.
It's funny because things that he was flabbergasted by, then in 97, and I suppose in retrospect it would have been shocking. He's like, how can you see me? And he was like trying to figure out how someone's talking to him through the TV. It's like, we have so many things in our houses now that probably have cameras and can monitor us, and we have like Alexa and stuff like that, and our phones and computers. It just seems like of course there's stuff where people can monitor us, but for him it was like, oh my god, like what's happening?
Yeah, I did think that scene where he's watching the same financial news show that he does every night, and there's this old guy just talking about all this boring stuff, and he's kind of looking at the clown, and then every now and then the guy will say something like, "You just sneezed, Nicholas," and then he'll look up at the TV, and then the guy will still be talking about financial stuff, but he eventually starts having a conversation with his TV, the financial reporter guy. So I thought that was a pretty cool introduction into the game.
Yeah, it was good.
Another scene I liked, and so what they did is they had this Christine girl sort of lead him around a little bit. He didn't know it, but she was part of the game, and she kind of led him around on this adventure. And so she spills drinks on him. She gets fired, so he tries to meet her behind the restaurant to apologize, and then this guy collapses right in front of him, and he's like, wait, how do we know this is real? And she's like, he's pissing his pants, is that real enough for you? So I thought that was a pretty funny line.
It was, and it was so disgusting. I mean, we know now, obviously it was part of the game, but like, she clears out his mouth to give him CPR, or mouth to mouth, and she like cleans out like vomit. It's so gross.
Yeah, I think the guy had dentures, so she like took his dentures out, and there's all this like spit like coming out. It's just very, very disgusting. Yeah, I think one of the points is that Nicholas, or one of the things that Nicholas is used to being in control of every aspect of his life. and the game really takes that away from him. Like he's kind of like a pawn in the game. He's kind of being played with, and he has very little control over anything that's happening to him.
Yeah, I think that came across well, and you got to see this character shift and change his perspective because of his experiences throughout the movie.
Yeah, and it makes him interact with more like normal people that are all different kinds of people that he would never interact with in his day-to-day life.
I feel like there was some elements of like the Truman Show in this plot, and I think that probably came out after this, right? That was maybe like 98 or something. I don't know. But especially, I'm skipping towards the end, but when he goes in and there's like the cafeteria with all the actors that he's been encountering, I was like, oh, this feels like the Truman Show, and he's, coming to face with the fake reality.
Yeah, it's like he never really like dealt with all of the issues that happened to him in his life. And this is kind of making him like talk about his dad's suicide and talk with his ex-wife. So that was kind of cool. He asked the maid about his dad, and I noticed during that scene he was eating a sandwich and milk, kind of like maybe like a little kid would. So it was kind of like he was a kid asking about his dad.
Yeah, and it's the same woman who's worked for them since he was a kid. So it was a nice callback to that.
Yeah, and then I guess another example of him being out of his element is that I can't remember how. I think it's after he gets a taxi driver drives him into the San Francisco Bay or whatever, and he has to use this special knob to get out of the taxi. But somehow or another, he ends up in Mexico, in this village, in like a casket or like a. So he breaks out of that, and he's in this white suit, and he's all dirty, and it was just such a contrast to what his normal, like, rich guy San Francisco life was.
Yeah, speaking of that, so, I mean, everything lines up perfectly. I mean, it has to for plot, but he gets given the handle to roll down the window, which, by the way, kids, you used to have to roll down windows. It wasn't power windows. And his taxi driver is the guy from, well, he's from Sons of Anarchy, right? Is he on Sons of Anarchy?
I think he is, yeah.
And he's from Braveheart.
Isn't he also in
oh wait, Gladiator. Not Braveheart, Gladiator.
Yeah, he's the guy with scars on his face from Gladiator.
So it was fun to see him because I haven't seen this movie, but I didn't know he was in it. And then also the woman, Christine, she is in Silent Hill, which I just watched a couple months ago. So I was like, who is that? I feel like she's familiar, and that's why.
I've not seen that movie.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I just thought it's like Kelly said earlier, it's kind of hard to believe how much they can predict every little thing he's going to do. But the orchestration of the game, quote unquote, is just amazing. Like, they know exactly how he's going to react in every situation and like where he's going to go, and everything is predicted and everything is part of the game. So it's pretty impressive.
They comment about how high the bill is and that they're going to split the bill at the end. I'm curious how much something like that would have cost or would cost. I mean, this is 20 years ago. I'm assuming it was like $1 million.
Yeah, I'm assuming it's well over $1 million. I mean, all those actors, all those cars they destroyed, all the houses they shot up, they painted up his house. I mean, it was a very, very elaborate birthday gift.
My gosh. So, yeah. So, are you going to give your siblings a hard time for not giving you something this extravagant?
Maybe they'll give me a game like Monopoly or something like that.
Yeah.
It would be close, but it would be cool to get an experience like that, instead of just a material item.
I don't think I would want an experience like this. I mean, if I was going to have some sort of experience, I would want some sort of like celebrity experience, like be flown and pampered or like walk a red carpet or something, not be like shot up and chased.
But I mean, this is like a real life experience that he didn't, I mean, he knew he was in a game, but he really didn't know he was in a game. He thought this game was trying to take all his money and like ruin his life. So, I mean, it wasn't like a game to him until he thought he killed his brother at the end. And then he jumped off a 50-story building through a window, a big glass window with a big pad that he fell into. I mean, it was a real experience to Nicholas.
Well, yeah. I guess the game, like they were saying, is tailored to each person and the lesson they have to learn, maybe. So, what is the lesson you need to learn, Mark? And what would happen in your game?
Well, I guess I should learn that I should not play as much golf, and I should be home with my family more.
So maybe they would inject something in you so that you're paralyzed from the waist down or from the neck down, and your family's dead, and you can't golf anymore.
That's a bit much. That you gotta take that down a few notches.
I mean, would you learn your lesson?
Yeah. Yeah, I'd probably only play a few days a week after that.
Oh, God.
Just kidding.
What's the lesson I would need to learn?
Why don't you answer that question?
I think it's interesting to hear what you have to say.
I think you need to learn that I have no good answer for this question.
You should just plead the fifth, right?
I'm not even pleading the fifth. I'm saying there's no lesson you need to learn. Everything's perfect.
Oh, great.
I mean, I think it would be cool to be in a game without knowing it, that, people were trying to get you or out to get you or, following you or something, just to give you like an adrenaline rush, as long as it's, safe or whatever.
Well, I mean, that also reminds me of one of our favorite friggin' shows of all time, Scare Tactics, because these people would be put in these situations that they thought were real, and they'd get scared. And we always would wonder, like, how do they know that these people aren't, first of all, going to attack back, which sometimes they did, or that they're not going to have a heart attack?
Yeah, no, that's a great show because it puts people into these real situations where it's the fight or flight response, and you don't know which way you would go, and you don't know which way they would go. But there was one episode where they picked up this hitchhiker, and he had a duffel bag with him. And then he said he had to go take a piss or something. So he made him pull over. He got out of the van, and while he was taking a piss, they looked in his bag, and there was human heads in there. And then he got back in the van, and they were driving. The guy in the back seat just started attacking him for real, punching him and stuff. So they had to stop, and reveal that it was just a joke.
Yeah, I mean, that was amazing. And, that one I remember really well. I remember the Bigfoot one, of course.
Yeah, I remember this one where this, this kid was working out in the middle of nowhere in this office building, and this, crazy guy came in, and he was, threatening to kill him. And, the guy's just, the guy who was having the prank played on him is like, "What's up, bro? What's up, bro?" He's ready to fight him. He's like, "What's up, bro? What's up, bro?"
I freaking love that show, and I love when what is his name? Tracy Jordan? Is that his name?
Morgan.
See, I'm thinking of his character name from 30 Rock, but I friggin' love that show. Where is it? Is it streaming? We need it right now.
I think you can watch it on YouTube, or if you just Google Scare Tactics, because it's very good. And Shannon Doherty was the first one, I think.
Oh, the first host?
I believe so, yeah.
Oh, I love that show. If you have never seen it, you need to go watch it immediately. And if you haven't watched it in a while, don't you think that's very similar to this?
It is similar in the sense that it puts these people into these outlandish situations when, and sees how they react to it. But I guess the game is different, where they know exactly how he's going to react to each situation, and they set up 3 things down the line based on how they know he's going to react.
Yeah. That all-day psych eval was setting him up for that.
Yeah, and I thought near the end of the movie, I don't know if people have seen the movie Falling Down, which Michael Douglas is also in, which is a very good movie. He kind of turns into the guy from Falling Down. He's just at the end of his rope. He doesn't care anymore. He's unpredictable. He's got nothing to lose. And he just turns into that pretty desperate guy who's just, he doesn't care anymore. He just wants to get to the bottom of this whole CRS thing. So he's, taking people hostage. He's ends up shooting his own brother on accident. So he's pretty down and out at the end. There's also this in the Chinese restaurant scene where he sees the actor's picture on the wall. We noticed this picture of Kenny Rogers, this black and white picture of Kenny Rogers that we saw at the church auction where we used to live up in Cherry, Minnesota. And so I went to this auction specifically to buy this Kenny Rogers picture. And they did every item around it, and they didn't even auction it. They didn't even bother auctioning it off. And they just kept going on down the line. So I was like, what do I do now? So I asked this guy, and he pretty much said you can just have it.
So we did put a donation in the offering plate the next day for it, but that hung in our house for years.
Yeah, I think I gave at the actual place, I put $5 in some donation thing, but I was pretty offended that the only item I went there for didn't even make it up for auction.
Well, and I have to clarify why would we even bid on this thing, but it was like this huge picture of Kenny Rogers' face, and it was hilarious. And then like my personal connection to Kenny Rogers is that he was the first concert I went to when I was like 5. My parents brought me to a Kenny Rogers concert here in Duluth.
Wow, I didn't know that. I mean, sounds like quite a gamble.
Yeah, probably. But also the most recent Kenny Rogers connection is that when Walt and Jesse in Breaking Bad, like, witness this murder, their clothes are all covered in blood and they have to go to Walmart and buy new clothes, and they both buy Kenny Rogers t-shirts.
Hey, I mean, I don't know what Kenny Rogers' nickname is. It might be the Gambler, I don't know. But that's, you gotta represent.
I love Kenny. I wish he hadn't done his plastic surgery, but,
Yeah, he doesn't look like Kenny anymore.
Aw.
So I thought it was interesting the very end of the movie that they basically have the guy commit suicide and his whole life flashes before his eyes as he's falling down this whole building, and then he falls in this pad. They have all these guys ready to make sure he's okay, and then it's just like, oh, okay, let's have your birthday party now. I mean, come on.
I know, like, literally you make the decision to kill yourself, and after you've murdered your brother, and, okay, now it's time to party. Like, there's no way you could reconcile that and be able to, like, have a drink with your friends.
Yeah, I think the guy would be in therapy for, like, months, but nope, we're gonna have your birthday party now.
Yeah, it's a little, I mean, it's not a little, it's the most extreme situation I can imagine, but I guess that was the big twist.
But according to Conrad or Connie, he's became too much of an asshole, so they had to do that to him. So yeah. He's less of an asshole now.
Well, that's good. Yeah, but he will probably have PTSD from this experience. Anything else you want to say about the game?
Well, then I don't want to give too much away, but he leaves this extravagant birthday party to go have coffee with this girl at the airport.
Yeah, that's kind of dumb because she's literally an actress and she was literally playing a part the entire time. And why are you interested in her? I mean, is that showing growth in you as a person? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't see where that relationship was going. She looked significantly younger than him, although he was only 48, supposedly. But yeah, I mean, and then the movie just abruptly ends right there, so...
Yeah, I don't know. I didn't love that plot. Well, let's rank this movie on a scale of 0 to 10. 0 being you hated it, 10 being it's a perfect movie. And what's our scale? I'm thinking those clown dolls, but I'm also thinking, like, window cranks. Like, what do you think?
I don't know, $1,000 shoes maybe.
$1,000, yeah, one shoe that costs $1,000. How many shoes do you give the game?
I'm gonna give the game $6,000 worth of shoes, so 6.
I was also gonna give it a 6. I think it's fine. It probably was better back in '97. I didn't like its lack of female characters, and definitely didn't like zero interaction. It's a good concept, but I didn't love it.
Yeah, I guess one thing I liked is that the audience goes along on the journey with him. Like, we don't know what's going on, just like he doesn't know what's going on. So it's,
Yeah, they weren't showing like behind the scenes stuff, and like we're in on it with them. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it could have been we know they're orchestrating this whole thing and he doesn't, or
Like the Truman Show, where we know he's on TV.
good point. Yeah, so I mean, the audience really had no, only kind of knew what he knew. So, I mean, that was a cool journey to go on with him.
Well, Horror Rewind listeners, I hope that you get some cool immersive experiences in your life, but hopefully nothing as extreme as this. I mean, unless you want that, I don't know.
Yeah, this was a very extreme experience. It was almost like like he was in a video game. Like, every turn he made, something weird happened. Like, I mean, he finally got home. Somebody had broken into his house and used this like black light paint like everywhere, and I can't remember what it said, but I mean that would feel very violating for your entire house to be painted with black light paint, and like the second you turn off the lights or whatever, it's just all this stuff about how he's like an a-hole and stuff. So
Yeah.
I really liked the some of the music in the movie was kind of like that. It's like a one key piano thing, like ding 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 ding. I don't know, it just kind of gives you a weird like eerie feeling, I guess.
I think that music's copyrighted. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, oh man, yeah. That's the only song I can play on a piano. And then another thing I noted is he's talking to these guys at the athletic club, so he gets rejected from the game, and then I don't know if he kind of forgets about it, but then he hears these guys at his athletic club talking about the game and like how great the game is and how they wish they could go back and relive the game or whatever. But then I noticed these guys, and maybe this is like a rich guy thing, they left like full drinks and they just left. Like, they had like expensive scotch and like martinis, and they just like, the guy took like one sip, said something to Michael Douglas, and he like said, okay, I gotta go home. So
Maybe it's not a rich guy thing. Maybe it's you as an alcoholic thing. No, just kidding.
no, I think that was, for me, would be a red flag, saying these guys are definitely actors.
Were they actors, though? Did we find out later?
Yeah, they were actors. They were at it was kind of a cool scene at the end where there was everyone who he had interacted with in the, I don't know how long, week of this game were all in that cafeteria together eating. So that was a pretty cool scene, and they all kind of looked at him like, well, he's here, but I'm assuming they knew he was going to be there. Well, one more thing. There's a scene where he's fighting. So Conrad thinks that Nicholas is in on it, and he's working with CRS, and they're yelling at each other in the streets of San Francisco. And this guy comes out of his apartment, and he's kind of like listening to him fight, and then he just kind of turns around and he goes, "I'm calling the cops." So I thought that was a funny scene.
That was funny. I liked how the actor did that line reading. It was great.
And I'm not sure, and I'm 99% sure I'm wrong on this, but it looked like the guy at the beginning of Ace Ventura, who Ace Ventura steals the dog from, who says, Ace Ventura says, "Hey, do you mind if I can pet your dog?" And the guy goes, "I don't give a rat's ass."
Well, we can easily verify this via IMDb, so we're going to check it out after we get done recording here, and you'll have to wait till next week, listeners, to find out if it was the same man. But until next time, I'll see you in the horror section.
Bye.